Good evening and welcome to this special presentation by the League of Women Voters of Ventura County. Tonight we're going to hear from the supporter and the opponent of the Measure K. This is a school bond measure in the Ojai Unified School District area. I'm David Marin, a member of the League of Women Voters. It's my pleasure to moderate tonight's discussion. And at this time I'd like to introduce the president of the League of Women Voters of Ventura County, Betsy Patterson.
Good evening. I'm happy to welcome you all on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Ventura County. 100 years ago, the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women across the nation the right to vote. We hold the right to vote precious, since not all people were given that right in the original Constitution. And for 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been dedicated to encouraging civic engagement and informing voters about candidates and issues. From its beginning and continuing today, the League is a nonpartisan political organization. We do not support or oppose any candidate or political party. Each of us has a voice in our government, but only if we use our vote. To be informed voters, we must ask questions of the candidates and understand the pros and cons for each ballot proposition before we cast our vote. This is your opportunity as voters to learn about this measure and what it would mean to you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you have many of your questions answered, and be sure to make a plan to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. We'll now begin with opening statements. We are going to hear from the proponent of the measure first, and that is Tiffany Morse. When you're ready, Tiffany, you have 2 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Tiffany Morse. I'm the superintendent of Ojai Unified School District. And as you may know, I moved to Ojai a little more than a year ago, and I'm so glad to live in this valley and have an opportunity to serve the students in the Ojai Unified School District. Everyone knows that the center of a community is the schools, and this is certainly true in Ojai. Our assets are our schools, the students who attend them, and the employees who work here. And on this front, we are doing a great job. Our COVID response has been better than most districts. We've made significant academic improvements last year, and we doubled our reserve to protect against economic uncertainty. But our schools are more than 70 years old on average, some from the 1920s, and they're definitely showing their age. While we've done our best to take good care of our facilities, there's only so much that we can do given the passage of time and the era in which our schools were built. Our schools require updating and modernization, and the longer we wait, the more expensive it will be to our community in the long run. Measure K will allow us to continue the great work of Measure J, upgrading inadequate electrical systems, replacing deteriorating plumbing, improving student access to technology, and replacing the 60-year-old pool at Nordhoff. We will also be making safety and security improvements that are much needed across the district. We know this is a difficult time, so we've been very mindful of taxpayers. We could have asked for $60, but we are only asking for a much more modest $27 per $100,000 of assessed value. We also know that Measure J has been a significant local stimulus to vendors. We are committed to delaying the collection of taxes for 2 years, and we think it's important for Measure K right now so that we can take advantage of the lowest interest rates in history, saving taxpayers $10 million over what a bond this size would typically cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Our next, now we'll hear from the representing opponents, and that is Bob Daddy.
Hi, my name's Bob Daddy. I've been here since 1995. I founded Ojai Flow. I incorporated Skate Ojai. I've taught driver's training here in Ojai to students like Ryan Blatz, been a Little League coach and assistant track coach at Oak Park High School, and pushed the biggest bond through that this valley has ever seen. But that was for the right reason. I voted for the last 3 school bonds, yes, but for the right reason. I served on the Measure J Oversight Bond Committee for 4 years and on the 7-11 Closure Committee, and yes, that was for the right reason. I am opposed to the bond for Measure K, and that is for the right reason. What we have here, really, is a lack of trust in the voters of California on Prop 15. Which is earmarked for those school improvement that Measure K portends to address. We have 14 million Americans unemployed and rising. Even the happiest place in the world, Disneyland and the Friendly Skies American Airlines, now laying off and furloughing thousands, and our turn is to come. 5.5 million are behind in the forbearance on their mortgages, and 3.5 million behind on car payments, and Congress hold us hostage as to not surrender an advantage to the other side, leaving us falling in the middle. This taxing bond is wrong. It should have been a parcel tax. The timing is wrong without fully understanding the experience of distance learning as it mirrors distance working, which is working. We can have a parcel tax that allows us to pay as we go. Why speed this through if the funds were to be delayed for 2 years? What is the hurry?
Thank you. We're going to begin with questions. I'm going to alternate between the two participants. Sometimes these questions I need to rephrase a little bit, but Bob, I'm going to start with you and talk about the aquatic center. So it's the understanding that this will build us an aquatic center. How the question is that a good thing, and how would the district pay for the upkeep on the new aquatic center?
What's interesting is the week that the last bond, Measure J, got approved, when Hank Bangser was here, and I believe our current board, I wrote a letter to the school district imploring them to take the first $5 million of this bond money and stop repairing a tired old pool that was years old, outdated, non-functional, wasn't working, didn't serve a purpose. And to take at least $5 million immediately of the first dollar and spend that for a pool for this city, to partner with the community, the city, and have a community joint pool. Those efforts were, I guess they were laid upon deaf ears. There were other things to do. I thought a pool would have been fine at that time. Now, when you speak about an aquatic center, the last aquatic center put in California was $14 million, and that was put in, that's the current aquatic center, $14 million. What I'm concerned about is even if we have a $14 million or more aquatic center, where are the funds going to come from to run it? They won't come from drilling wells and solar systems and other things. They're gonna be a stretch to make everything work, and pools are tremendously expensive.
Thank you. And Tiffany, let's hear your thoughts about the aquatic center. How will the district pay for the upkeep on the facility?
I'm so glad to know that we agree that a pool and aquatic center is really important for the Ojai community. At this point, we have two options with our pool. Our pool is failing. We can't host CIF games and meets there. We can't have championships there because it doesn't have a deep end, and we had to close it to community use based on its current condition. So if Measure K does not pass, we will need to take some of our remaining Measure J funds, probably about $1 million, just to improve the pumps and filtration system. But with Measure K, we can create an aquatic center for community use, and I get calls about this all the time. This is really important to the community. We are currently exploring partnerships with potentially the YMCA. We would certainly explore a partnership with the city to help us run the Learn to Swim programs, but we currently pay for the upkeep and maintenance of a pool, so that's not significantly more. But we would definitely be open to partnerships around the community side of the aquatic center, and we've already begun those conversations. Unfortunately, I can't speak to the decisions of the past and why the decision to not use Measure J funds on the pool was made, but I do know that we had to make really critical decisions because we only funded $35 million of the $100 million of needs in the district. And I just think at that time, the pool wasn't on the most important and critical needs for our students.
Thank you. Tiffany, next question to you. As far as picking up where Measure J left off, will you be able to utilize the same bond staff, bond consultants that you currently have with Measure J without interruption, or will a new team come into place?
Part of the reason for the timing of Measure K is so that we can keep our momentum that we have going. We have great Measure J staff. They've been able to really get us on track with Measure J. They provide great oversight. We are able to accomplish more projects than we were with just one bond manager. When we had one bond manager, we were doing about $5 million worth of projects in a summer. We were able to do around $12 million a summer now. So we would utilize our same great bond staff who provides not only great oversight and allows us to complete construction quicker, but they also save us money. So by having on-staff support, we're able to find things that save money. For example, we had a roof at a place to grow that was failing and nobody knew that it was under warranty. Our bond managers were able to find out that it was under warranty and get the entire roof replaced for free under the warranty, which would have cost us $35,000. Time over time, we find that having these two staff members and this team not only saves the district time, but money. And so part of our timing for Measure K is so that we can keep that great staff in place and keep the momentum going. Bob Daddy, in fact, in our COC committee in 2018 said that we are making great progress and we just need to keep the momentum going. And we agree, that's why we support Measure K right now.
Thank you. Bob, your comments about continuing Measure J, where it's leaving off and keeping the bond staff in place and the bond management team?
Well, I guess I'm a little confused. I thought that this bond would not really go into effect K should it be approved for 2 years. And I would have really thought that we would have wrapped up J a number of years ago, at least very, very soon. And so what I see is a hiatus of at least a few years. So I'm not really sure what's going to be necessary. The funding is we're going to have to take a look at that. One of the big things that I'm going to be concerned about is the way the bond is written in the allocation. We went ahead and managed to spend $3.3 million for a kitchen that was not in the $100 million ask for deficiencies. We have a number of projects that are slated that when we did the study for all of the deficiencies, they're just not there. Aquatic Center was not in the deficiencies. We didn't have solar in the deficiencies. We didn't have the kitchen in the deficiencies. And in the bond, when you read the entire language, what it says is that the bond can be used for real property acquisition. And so those are things that are going to have to be determined. Now, not doing certain things as discussed, certainly not illegal. It is certainly within their ability. I'm sorry?
I have to stop you there. Time's up.
I didn't see any time. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Happens a lot. But you can see the clock now, correct?
No, I can't.
Could you switch back to gallery view, please? If you switch to gallery view, you should, up in the upper right corner of your Zoom screen.
Oh, view. Okay.
Go to gallery.
All right. I've got it. A minute 30. I'm sorry.
Perfect. You're fine. I'm going to begin the next question with you, though, Bob. And the question is, why are you standing in on the opposing side? And do you feel that this is a conflict of interest since you are the owner of a local newspaper?
Actually, local papers have been defending and informing, protecting communities forever. That's what we do. What I feel is that we have too much focus not on education. I don't feel that our educational excellence and proficiencies have really been where they need to be. When I go to greatschools.org, we have ratings that are at a place that, you know, I can't really see why we need to be where we are. I urged prior superintendents, not this one, prior, to please, let's do something. Let's step up the academics. Let's do these other things that we need to do. We really haven't done that. I think what we're doing is we're getting sidelined with building and expanding and painting and doing lots and lots of things. And now we're in a transition. I don't really think anybody has a clear understanding of where this transition is going. And I think time-wise, we're going to see that this thing works or doesn't work well. And I don't think we should be focused on aquatic center and solar farms and other items when right now, this transition needs 100% of everybody's time and focus and attention and input. So That's why I'm opposed to the building, not forever, just during this transition.
Thank you. Tiffany, we'll ask you if you want to weigh in about Bob standing in on the opposing side. Do you think there's a conflict of interest with the owner of the local newspaper taking a position in a forum like this?
I'm new to Ojai, and so I'm just learning about the role of the paper. And I would say, in my experience, the paper is not always neutral in its stance towards the school district. And I think that this is certainly problematic in terms of this particular measure and being here tonight and taking opposition. I have to pay for ads in the newspaper. Our committee would have to pay for ads in the newspaper because we don't own it. So, you know, that's it seems a little bit unfair, but I understand that, you know, everyone has their opinion. I would just like to briefly say that the Measure K will actually, even though we don't collect taxes for 2 years, we're able to sell bonds immediately after passage and to use those funds immediately. So as soon as we expend our Measure J funds, and even concurrently, we can marry Measure J funds, the remainder of those funds, with Measure K. So we're delaying the taxes, but not actually the work of Measure K. And then I would just say, like, the kitchen at Matilaha was based on some unforeseen things that happened. The kitchen was on the list, the pool is on the list, all of those things are on the list. But sometimes projects change over time, and I would hope that we would understand that that is our job, is to make the best decisions we can at the time based on what's needed when we start projects.
Thank you. Tiffany, what will be the effect if Measure K does not pass?
Yeah, so there's just a number of things that are happening at our schools. As I mentioned, if we don't replace the pool now, we will still have to put $1 million probably into the pool, and it still won't have a deep end. So even $1 million later, we won't be able to host our CIF playoffs, and our swim meets and things like that will still be impacted because we won't have a deep end in the pool. So those are really, that is just one of many, many projects though. I did classroom walks last week as part of our preparations for returning to campus. And I can just tell you the state of our classrooms in many places is really problematic. I don't know that I would put my own child in some of our classrooms, just given the state of where they are. And so we, one, have to do lots of repairs on things that are continuing to deteriorate that we weren't able to address in Measure J, but also our facilities, things like painting, things like plumbing, things like roofs, our infrastructure for technology, those all will continue to deteriorate. And if we don't have Measure K, at some point we will have to pass another bond, and it will just cost us more because we won't be able to take advantage of the historically low interest rates and construction rates that we have right now.
Okay, thank you. Bob, same question to you. Share with us your thoughts about the effects if Measure K does not pass.
Well, I am a supporter of kids. I'm not a supporter of having a 30-year bond and buying 3-year Chromebooks that are obsolete. I'm not a supporter of financing painting for 30 years. I don't believe we should have used this vehicle. I am a supporter in a parcel tax. I am a supporter in pay-as-you-go. And I think that if of all the items, half a dozen items, the single most important item we come up with, the one that makes the absolute most sense, is going to be a pool, an aquatic center, some type of facility. And we can demonstrate that we can go ahead and we can pay for it. And we can demonstrate that we can not go under and have to go without other things. When the superintendent and I had 2 different discussions in her office for an hour apiece on different items. And we had a discussion. I told her a year ago I wouldn't support a bond. I didn't say I wouldn't support a parcel tax. And I didn't say I wouldn't support school infrastructure. I just don't like these 30-year long-term doubling of the rates when we're buying items that have a very short use. And at the rate we're moving along in electronics, a Chromebook is going to be obsolete in 3 years.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to start the next question with you, Bob. And if Measure K passes, my understanding and from some of these questions is that there'll actually still be 2 other bonds in place. I'm not sure what the total amount of debt authorized will be for the school district, but can you share your perspective about having Measure K while there's existing bonds in place?
The first bond was brought in by Gwen Gross. And the people resoundingly, me, Rotary, everybody, we thought this was a great idea, and we went ahead and got that bond in. The state was flush the following few years, and they were impressed with any community that would go ahead and vote themselves a bond instead of ask for a handout. And they went ahead and matched our bond. We had a bond that went up and went down in flames and didn't make it for whatever reason. I don't really remember what the reason was. I wasn't very much involved at that time, but I did vote in favor of that bond. This last bond, I voted in favor of that bond, and I'm fine with that. What we're looking at is with this new bond is an estimated $86 million 30-year lifetime. That is an enormous bond. We still have a prior bond. I think we're going to be well over $100 million in bonds. I just think that I'm not for that type of long-term extended spending. Again, we have all of the facilities. There were other measures. Facilities could have been sold this year under the old Schwarzenegger rule, where you could have sold facilities and used that for general fund. We don't, in my opinion, need all the facilities we currently have, and we didn't have enough money to spread on everything.
Thank you, Bob. Tiffany, same question in a way, as far as share with us the total amount of debt that'll be authorized for the school district, including the existing bonds and this new bond, and why we are having another bond on top of those 2.
Sure. So first of all, the number of bonds that we have is actually almost irrelevant, right? If we have $100 million of needs, it doesn't matter if we have 2 bonds for $50 million or we have 3 bonds that total $100 million. It has to do with the total amount of need. And unfortunately, the way that the state funds facility needs and modernization has changed over time, and we no longer receive any state funding for all of the modernization and facilities needs. And of course, our annual allocation from the state doesn't cover that. But in terms of bonds, every unified school district in Ventura County has bonds. That's how we have to fund this work. And most of them have 3, many have 4, 5, or even 6 bonds to fund this work. Bonds are more popular than parcel taxes because parcel taxes are very small. So for us, a parcel tax would have given us around $4 million, which doesn't get us near the needs that we have to meet. And so our current rate is $36 per $100,000 of assessed value, which is the 3rd lowest in the entire county. Ventura Unified, their bond rate is 21, but they also have a $59 parcel tax on top of that. So the only school districts that have lower tax rates for bonds than us in the entire Ventura County are Somas and Conejo Valley Unified. So we have a need for this, and our total is very reasonable.
Thank you. Tiffany, there's several questions as far as why are you coming to voters now, as far as pandemic, the economy, and you've somewhat addressed this as far as lower interest, but I want to give you an opportunity to go into a little more detail of what was the impetus to bring the bond forward now in these times.
Sure. This was, I was waiting for the clock to start. This was a difficult decision. The school board, we spent months and months and months discussing it. We are aware of COVID, and that's why we are delaying the tax collection, but not the actual start of the work. We also know that Measure J has been a significant local stimulus with about $4.5 million, approaching $5 million of funds spent on local vendors and contractors. So there's nothing else that can stimulate our local economy right now in this time of need. As we discussed, we also have a lot of momentum going with our current bond work. And we have some projects that we've been saving from the end of Measure J that if we have Measure K, for example, solar, we'll be able to install solar across the district, whereas Measure J will only fund partial solar. Same thing with the pool. We can fix the pool, but it won't really fix our problems and won't really allow us to have community use. So now is the right time for Measure K because we can save taxpayers $10 million. We actually refinanced our 1990 bonds and we're able to save $2 million. Our Measure J came in at about $58 million based on our last series. We've saved $10 million there. So it just makes sense for us to use historic low construction rates and interest rates to continue our great momentum for Measure J.
Thank you. And Bob, same question as far as your perspective about coming to the voters right now with the bond and the points made about why this is a good time to come forward.
Well, I've been very vocal. I think this is probably not the right time. But I do want to maybe get some clarification, or at least I'm going to state what I think is clear. And well, if the bond passes, well, we may not collect for a couple of years. When you go ahead and initiate the bonds, we would be accruing interest for those couple of years. So there isn't going to be any free lunch. As you go ahead and sell the bonds, we're going to be accruing interest, whether it's collected or not for 2 years. As far as the solar, I spent a lot of time with the city on the solar. I'm really opposed to the solar because there are other joint authorities within the state of California that will put in solar at schools for free. And that is Spur, which is one of them. And that was discussed. I was at that city council meeting along with Bill Wyrick and Randy Haney. And it just appears that that's an expenditure we don't need. As far as the pool, I understand that thing has been a wreck for years. It does need help. That's why I recommended the first thing we do was a pool. But then again, how much? If $4 million isn't enough on a parcel tax and you have money left over from Measure J, how much money is being spent on an aquatic center? And I've yet to hear that. And that's something I'd be very interested in hearing.
Thank you. Bob, I'm going to start the next question with you. As far as the way these types of bonds work within schools, usually there's an oversight committee. We'll give Tiffany a chance to explain what will be set up. But since you're going first, share with us your thoughts about bond oversight committee, the way you think it should be structured to ensure there's transparency between the board and the community. That's for you, Bob.
Okay. Well, actually, I was on that bond committee, oversight committee for 4 years. We had a little bit of difficulty. For some reason, we couldn't get the cameras on, and we couldn't get certain recordings for certain, what I thought were critical meetings. We had some really super people. We had some great people there. We had some very, very good chairs of the oversight committee. We had some incredible citizen volunteers that were at that oversight committee. I think they did as well as they could understand. We couldn't understand why the school hired Balfour Beatty and why Balfour Beatty was 400% higher on every project that they proposed. Their overrun costs were more than the entire project many times. We went through half a dozen different bond managers. And so it was a difficult time. We had an awful lot of inflation at that time. We had delays because of prior bonds and prior superintendents, not this one, but 4 prior superintendents not doing their job and not closing out the prior bond work. And again, this is not this superintendent's issue. This is our prior superintendents. So when we got this bond and we heard that, gee, we can only paint and trim trees, a lot of people were pretty horrified to find out we didn't follow the process.
Thank you. Tiffany, generally the same question to you. So will there be a bond oversight committee that regularly reviews the funds and the projects and reports back to the board and the community? How will that work?
Sure. So there's currently a bond oversight committee of Measure J. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow night. Our meeting is live streamed. You're welcome to watch it. It is available for you to review live. We also are always taking applications for people to join our committee. As Bob mentioned, we have really great citizens who are stepping up and making sure that we're spending our bond funds in accordance with what we said we would do. And I am appreciative of the first Citizens Oversight Committee helping us to understand where we could have done a better job, helping us to work through construction delays, recommending the 2 bond managers. So that's really important. It's also important to know that we have lots of other regulations as well. We have an annual audit, which has found no exceptions of Measure J. We had our Standards and Poor's Rating Agency, which is a global independent third-party group who rates and reviews bonds globally, who actually increased our ratings based on the Measure J performance from A+ to AA-, which is the highest rating that any district in the county has based on the performance of our Measure J bond. We also have regular school board oversight. And then I also want to say that bonds are really highly regulated. So in this idea of selling items that cost, have a short-term lifespan, that we actually have a blended life of those assets, which is highly regulated. And I can talk more about that in a future question if it comes up.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. It's obvious you two are very well steeped in this issue, but for a lot of viewers, a lot of voters in the community, there's really not a clear understanding of what the bond is. So I want to give you an opportunity, Tiffany, and then Bob can share his comments. Can you take us through this bond? What is the scope, the description? What type of projects will actually be associated with this bond?
So as I've mentioned, we have plumbing that we need to do. We have a lot of basic facilities needs, electrical, those kinds of things, plumbing, sewer, irrigation systems. We are really focused on also upgrading our community use spaces. As I mentioned in my opening, it's not just about the students, but our schools are the heart of our community, and our community members who maybe don't have kids in school or whose kids have graduated, they still use our facilities because we really are we have big property in the city, and it's used by everyone. So we want to make sure that our fields are in good shape, that our community stadium is usable, performing arts spaces. We need lighting, expanded tennis courts. So as all bonds happen, we have a project list, and then we have to go out and find out how much those projects cost, which is a process. And then based on the cost of those projects and in current market value, then we determine which projects are the most important and critical to be funded, which is a process that happens through our school board.
Okay, thank you. And Bob, share with us your thoughts about those particular aspects of the bond, the detail, what it'll go towards.
Well, I believe we still have a deficiency list left over from 2014. So I would certainly hope what we would do is we would go back and uncover all of those deficiencies. What I have heard, which I'm very uncomfortable from some board members, is they're using a word that is pretty scary, and it's a very, very high level of importance, and that's called unsafe. The school cannot operate anything that is unsafe. And when I hear this from board members, it just kind of disturbs me, because if it's unsafe, those facilities have to be shut, and they have been in the past. When the school declared the pool unsafe and the tennis court unsafe, the Department of State Architects closed those facilities. And it was the school and Joe DeVito, who was the mayor of Ojai at that time, that worked and bailed the school out. They ponied up $100,000 of city money to rush to the aid of the school that didn't have the money, and was able to patch up those 2 facilities to get those going. So I would hope that the deficiencies list is first. I would hope there's not a single thing on the unsafe list. And then I would hope that we would have a wish list, which is a doable list. And then I would hope, and I understand this cafeteria came by, it's great. I hope they get to go inside and use it one of these days. When things come in, And again, it is within the school's authority to do this, to make
Have to,
changes.
yeah, have to stop you there. But Bob, I'm going to start the next question with you as far as share your thoughts about how bonds and these new buildings and facilities, I guess the idea is that these will really enhance education services and programs. Share with us your thoughts about that argument that these bonds are necessary to enhance education.
I think portions of the bonds are critical to enhance education. I think the new, and now this is an arcane word already, library facility, it's not. Multimedia, multidiscipline, it's a multifunctional place. We need an expansion of high-speed internet. We're gonna need the 5G. We are gonna need these things that propel us. The technology is moving so fast, it is going to just, it's going to be like light speed, those things we thought we needed. I hope we still have books. I like reading books. I like paper. I enjoy books, but we're going to go to places very quickly where these kids are going to be, they're going to be locked up in, whether we go back into the classroom or have remote distance learning, this electronic media is going to be a massive part of the school. And so we're going to have to update, and we're going to have to improvise and make sure we get these things for them, because it will be a cyber world, and we've got to be ready to be able to help them, compete in this cyber world. It's international world. When I call somebody up, I mean, we do not get surprised when you get a hold of Mumbai for technical support on your computer, or Singapore. It's just this global world we're in.
Thank you. Tiffany, can you talk a little bit about how the new buildings and facilities will enhance education services and programs that is related to the bond money?
Sure. So research shows that facilities are actually tied to student achievement and that they have an impact. And we actually see this ourselves. We did a student survey in last December. We were going to do it twice, but COVID happened. So in our survey, we asked students how they felt about being at school. And I was surprised. The number one thing that came up from kids over and over again was related to facilities. They wanted better bathrooms. They wanted better outdoor space. They said that Nordhoff looked, I won't use the word that they used, but they said that Nordhoff looked old and outdated, politely. And we know that that affects how students feel about coming to our schools. We also know that having facilities that are adequate, that are modern, that have the tools that we need, the spaces that we need, is really important to families being in our valley. I mentioned myself, I would have a hard time in some of our classrooms having my child go there day after day, given its current condition. So we know that everything is tied. And I would say to Bob's earlier point, it's not an either or. We are focusing on increased academics. That is absolutely critical to us. And part of that work is also making sure that we have facilities where students feel great, want to come to school, their parents feel great, that they have athletic facilities that allow them to thrive, and that overall we have a whole program for our children from top to bottom.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and begin our closing statements now. We're going to go back to 2 minutes. And we're going to reverse the order. Bob will go first on the closing statement, followed by Tiffany. Bob, whenever you're ready, you have 2 minutes.
As far as the bond, my biggest objection is the way it's put together, the components that, again, we have so much flexibility that it's really kind of hard to understand what you're really voting for and what you're, quote, buying, if that's what we're doing. It's really without price tags and without, I see a scale of importance. Do those most important things. If the most important thing is not flushing the toilet, then it appears that the sewer is what needs to be done. That's the deficiencies. If it appears the wish list is the next thing, then that is the next best thing. Athletics is incredibly important to children. Their children wants, they have, that childlike time in their life. So I understand that it's not just about book learning and pounding, and there is a social aspect and a fun aspect and other aspects that need to be done. But I really think that with the last $65 million that we've spent on these facilities from these bonds, that we should have had some paint along the way, that we should have been able to fix up the appearance of the school, and we should have had some type of improvements interior-wise. Again, we got a 15 million, the state gave us a 15 million, we got a 35 million, that's $65 million in about a 20-year, no, it's not, it's about a, yeah, it's about a 20-year period of time. And now we're looking at that, the fact that we're gonna add another $86 million to that deficiencies. Were the deficiencies really 200 million or 300 million? Because it appears that 100 million doesn't even come close to what we're being told that we need.
Thank you, Bob. And Tiffany, we'll go ahead and hear your closing statement whenever you're ready. Let me go ahead and unmute you and we'll get started.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Sure. So in closing, I ask that we remember the role of our schools in the Ojai Valley community, and that while many of you may no longer have kids in our school system, we know that investing in our schools, in our public spaces, in our students who attend them, and in the employees who work here, or even just investing in schools to increase your property values is really important, because our schools are the heart and future of our community. We have been great stewards of Measure J funds, as verified by many third-party agencies, and our kids deserve to be one step closer towards closing the $100 million worth of needs that we have to modernize and repair our schools. And Bob's right, we will start with the critical needs, and then we will look at what could possibly be on our wish list. The pool is a critical need for us. Measure K is a modest ask that's sensitive to the needs of the taxpayers and what's happening in our world right now related to COVID. Measure K is also a great benefit to our community. And you don't have to just take my word for it. Every school board candidate has endorsed Measure K, as have our administrators, many of our teachers, and our current board voted unanimously to place it on the ballot. We have prominent community members such as Glenn Fout, Tiarza Taylor, Jim Bailey, Jim Norris, Severa Laura, and Kara Hooper, who are all asking for your support and ask us to join us in voting yes on Measure K for the right reasons, which is for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you for coming on the program tonight, so that the audience and the voters in the community will be able to hear from both of you and learn more about this. Before we go, two things. One, I want to take a moment to thank the volunteers at the League for helping to put on this forum and all the others. Tonight we have Maddie, Pat, Ruby, Betsy. Everyone has been a big help. I certainly appreciate their involvement. And also we have a quick, short little presentation from the League to show you. This will only take about a minute or so, and we will go live here if this works. So we remind you at the League to plan your vote. Every registered voter will be mailed a ballot this year. You can return that ballot at the Postal Service or at one of the secure ballot boxes around town, or you can actually take it to one of the several polling centers around the county. You can still vote at a polling center, but please understand they're not like the polling places in the past. There's larger centers and you can vote at any one of them around the county. Mail-in ballots should be in your mailbox pretty soon if you have not already received it, but if you don't get one by October 16th, please contact the Elections Division. The last day to register is October 19th. We recommend at the League that everybody try to return their mail-in ballot by October 20th. That should be a sufficient time to make sure the Postal Service gets it, postmarks it, and gets it to the Elections Department before election evening. That way it'll be counted that night. However, it's important to remember that every ballot, as long as it's postmarked by November 3rd, will still be counted for up to 17 days, as long as it's received by the election department in that time. So it's going to take a little while to get all these results, because we'll be counting ballots for several days or maybe a week or two. So please be patient on election evening. We may not know results for a while. Couple of things that are available to you. There's where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. And that's a site where you can just punch in your information, and then you'll be able to follow your ballot to know, have you received it? Has it been in the post office? Is it back to the elections department? It's a pretty cool system for tracking your ballot. Votersedge.org is a site where you put in your address and it'll show you all the candidates that are running, along with ballot measures as well. And of course, the League's website, lwvventuracounty.org. You can visit that to learn more about the League. Or you can click on candidate forums, much like you did to register for tonight's forum. And from there, you can visit any, or you can view any of the videos that we've already recorded, including tonight's forums, or you can register to watch some of our upcoming forums for the rest of the county. With that, I do want to take a moment again to thank our 2 participants tonight. Thank you very much. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'm David Marin. Good evening